Welcome back to Law and Crime. We have been following live the Rosenbaum trial in Georgia. We will get back to that in a minute here. I want to introduce one of our new guests, Dmitry Gorin, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Dmitry, thanks for joining us today.
Sure, my pleasure.
Before we dip back live, let's talk a little bit about the Rosenbaum trial. We've been hearing from the defense and their case. What do you think so far?
It is a very tough case for the defense. The child had so many other injuries other than the injury that ultimately caused her death, that the defense really has an uphill battle here. They're doing what they're supposed to do, which is put on an expert to say, look, the cause of death and these other injuries could have come for other reasons, for basically kids bumping their heads or fighting or the usual excuses. But these are tough cases for the defense. They're going about it and working like fashion, putting on an expert, try to explain this alternative theory. But overall, right now, I think the prosecution is ahead.
All right, Dmitry, let's watch this trial and continue to listen to the defense. Right now on the stand, a forensic pathologist, Dr. Chris Sperry. Okay, so the forensic pathologist there talking a lot about bone healing, talking about bone fractures. He mentioned things about the appearances and the healing process here, and he said that one of these fractures or some of these fractures were old. So it's interesting because while we've been listening to this, we've kind of been talking here, and we're not sure if the language he's using is really helping the defense here. Dmitry, I want you to weigh in, obviously being a defense attorney. What do you think?
Well, it sounds like, or it looks like, this is the only expert they could find. I agree there are some inconsistencies in his statements. The testimony, to me, doesn't have great credibility. Overall, when you think about the facts of the case, how is it that children have fractures? Children get bruised, they fall, of course, but this child has so many fractures, so many bruises, and even burns possibly, that with this expert on the witness stand, with the way he's testifying, I don't think he's really helping the defense too much here.
Yeah, and we mentioned that he kind of contradicted himself a few times here from what he's been saying throughout the day today. If you're the defense attorney who's sitting there listening to all of this, what are you thinking when your medical expert is up here not doing a good job?
Oops. I mean, it's about preparation. When you're preparing such serious cases and have experts, it's about meeting with the expert and telling them not only the questions you're going to ask, but also the questions the other side is going to ask of them, so they're ready. Perhaps the expert didn't prepare himself, or the lawyers didn't take the time, but right now he's in cross-examination. Anything could happen, but really the whole defense could just be thrown out the window here because the expert is not doing what he's supposed to be doing, which is raising reasonable doubt successfully.
All right, Dmitry, thanks. Kirk, let's have you weigh in before the break here. What did you think of this forensic pathologist so far?
I certainly would have to agree with Dmitry. And not to mention, at one point, the expert even stated that some of the injuries were somewhat concerning. So I think that certainly wasn't helpful. It is a difficult case. The defense has to go with what they have. The only thing I would add is that while all this is going on, the jury is constantly looking at the photos of the broken bones or x-rays and so forth of the corpse. And I don't know how helpful that is to constantly have those pictures showing to a jury if this entire testimony is not that effective. So sometimes you just have to cut your losses and move on. Yeah,
it might have been quicker to do it, or better to do it quicker rather than dwell on it for longer.
Sure.
Okay, so we're still listening to Dr. Chris Sperry, the forensic pathologist here. This is the defense's medical expert on the stand. And this is interesting because he just said that scientifically there's not really a medical explanation for how old wounds are or how old to be able to date injuries and wounds, which I haven't heard before. I don't know if this is the best way for him to explain these things. A lot of things he's been talking about so far, I can't really tell if he's delivering them in the right way and if they're as direct as he's wanting them to come off. I don't know if it's actually translating the way he might want it to happen. Kirk, what do you think of this testimony so far? Is the jury buying this? Are you buying it?
Well, fortunately, I'm not on the jury as far as the defense is concerned. Now, in my experience in law enforcement, I have a difference of opinion. I mean, my understanding has always been that generally speaking, you can tell how old an injury is because generally speaking, injuries heal, or the rate that injuries heal is consistent. So, like I said, it's not an exact science, but certainly we can tell if someone has an injury that occurred, a year ago versus a week ago versus a month ago. So that's always my understanding. I think the doctor was asked the question as to was he surprised that other medical professionals disagreed with the fact that these injuries could have occurred during CPR. And I understood his answer. I don't think he necessarily did an effective job of communicating that answer to the jury. What he was trying to explain was that it's so uncommon that he wouldn't be surprised that another professional would find differently. So even me stating that is a little bit unclear. I have to slow down and say it and so forth. So I think he's having a little bit of difficulty communicating with the jury, to be quite frank.
Agreed. Dmitry, I want to ask you this because one of the things he said was why this injury occurred was just because of the fear and the emotional panic in Jennifer at the time. And that can obviously allude to strong force and things that you might obviously not do otherwise because you are in such a panic and that adrenaline mode. What do you think about that when he said that?
Well, that's their explanation for these injuries, that, hey, during CPR, the child suffered all these extensive bruises, all these fractures. Based on the totality of the circumstances, it doesn't convince me that he's being accurate. I just don't know what that's the theory of the defense, that, hey, this happened during CPR. So while I don't find it credible, that's his expert opinion, and we're not up there even looking at all these photographs. I could imagine what the jury's thinking, that they just want to have this expert finish and vote guilty.
Right. All right, we're going to go back live to that courtroom after we take a break here on Law and Crime. Stay with us. Plenty more when we come back. All right, so more testimony there from the forensic pathologist. Dmitry, basically what we've heard so far is that he's saying this seemingly was accidental. What are you gathering from what we've heard?
This is the crux of the defense, that the child died because of the parents' attempts to resuscitate the child using CPR. This expert has to sell that theory to get an acquittal for the defendant, that these injuries were accidental as a result of the CPR. But the nature, the extent, how long these injuries had been on the body seem to belie what he's saying. That's just not credible. So, but that's the crux. So perhaps all the defense needs is one juror to raise a reasonable doubt and get a hung jury. So perhaps the defense is trying to get that one or two jurors to agree with them, or at least to have some reasonable doubt.
All right, Dmitry, thank you. Kirk, we have about a minute here. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I thought the cross was rather effective. Immediately they kind of attacked, the prosecutor attacked the doctor's story with this bruising on the body. So bruising occurs differently based on the blood pressure. And if a person is under distress or not breathing, blood pressure drops, the bruising would be different. So what the defense is trying to establish here is that the bruising occurred on the victim here while the victim was basically alive and breathing, not when they were under distress. And doctor fumbled, I won't say fumbled, but it was difficult to kind of explain the way out of that. So the defense attacked that immediately. I thought they did it, I'm sorry, the prosecution attacked that immediately. I thought they did a very clean job to try to lay that out for the jury. To Dmitry's point, to create reasonable doubt. It's
looking like the cross-examination is going to be a lot better than what we saw from the questioning from the defense, with him at least.
Absolutely. And I didn't mean reasonable doubt. I mean to put in the mind of the jurors some doubt as to the testimony of the doctor. Forgive me.
All right, Kirk, thank you so much. We're taking a break right now on Law and Crime. When we come back, we'll be back live in the Rosenbaum trial.